Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee, 27th of August 2025. The first item on this morning's agenda is the election of chair, and I seek nominations for the position of chair for this morning's meeting. Councillor Sidaway.
Can we nominate yourself, Councillor Flagg?
Thank you, Councillor Sidaway. Councillor Richardson.
Seconded.
Thank you very much. Right. Could we then ask the clerk to bring in the members of the public and, or should I say, the applicant and the objectors?
Yes, of course, Chair.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Flagg, the elected chairman for this morning's BCP Licensing Subcommittee. The first item on the agenda is to deal with the housekeeping.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council's website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair in case of disruption. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of your nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the gardens opposite the front of the building in Bourne Avenue. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume completely down on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2 on this morning's agenda, apologies. We've received no apologies for absence for this morning's meeting. Item 3, declarations of interest. Can I ask each member of the subcommittee just to confirm whether they have any declarations of interest with regards to the item of business on this morning's agenda? Councillor Richardson.
None, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sidaway.
No, Chair.
Thank you. Item 4, protocol for public speaking at hearings. A protocol for public speaking at meetings of the licensing subcommittee is included with the agenda sheet for noting. Item 5, application for a premises licence at Chicken and Beer, 58 Stanfield Road, Bournemouth, BH9 2NP. For the benefit of anyone following the live stream this morning, please note that this hearing is no longer required as the applicant has withdrawn their application. Item 6, Dolce Vita, 147-149 Commercial Road, Poole, BH140JD. I will now ask each participant to introduce themselves, and once again, I am Councillor Flagg, the chair for this morning's subcommittee meeting.
Councillor Richardson, member of Licensing Subcommittee.
Councillor Peter Sidaway, member of the subcommittee.
Thank you, members. And BCP Council, please.
Sarah Rogers, Principal Licensing Officer. Ellie King, Licensing Officer observing.
And I'm Linda Cole, the legal advisor this morning.
And I'm Sinead O'Callaghan, the clerk to the subcommittee this morning.
Thank you. And for the applicant, please.
Morning, councillors. I'm John Walsgrove and I'm the solicitor for the applicant.
My name is Domenico De Paola. I am employed in Dolce Vita restaurant.
Thank you. Can I just check? I have on my list Leslie Johnson, agent for the applicant. Just wanted to check whether that's a.
I'm acting and making the representations on behalf of Leslie, an applicant.
Okay.
She's not here today.
Not here. Thank you for that. Objecting, please.
Good morning, Chair. Gareth Gosling, Sergeant with Dorset Police, and I'm joined today by Louise Busfield.
Thank you. And I just wanted to let everyone know that we're also joined by Councillor Canavan this morning, who's on the Teams meeting, who's following for observation purposes only. He will take.
Sorry, we missed the gentleman on the end.
Beg pardon. Yeah, so he will take no part in the deliberations. Sorry, can I just check?
It's Mr. De Paola's brother. He's just here to observe.
Ah, right. Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Sorry, I didn't check.
No worries. Right. Before I run through the procedure, please may I check that all persons who have given notice of their intention to speak have been identified, and any person who wishes to withdraw a representation or wishes not to speak has been identified. If there are no comments, I will take this as correct. I will now explain the proposed procedure and order of speaking for the hearing as follows. The licensing officer presents the report. Questions of the licensing officer by all parties. Members of the subcommittee to go first. The applicant will make their application. Questions of the applicant by all parties. Members of the subcommittee to go first. Objectors will make representations. Questions of the persons objecting by all parties. Members of the subcommittee to go first. All parties will be given an opportunity to sum up, with the party who spoke last to go first. The hearing will then conclude. The subcommittee will deliberate in private with the legal advisor and clerk present. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within a period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held. The notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. I will now ask all parties to confirm agreement on the proposed procedure or make representations. Sarah Rogers, please.
Yes, fine, thank you.
Linda Cole.
Fine, thank you.
Mr. De Paola. Mr. John Walsgrove.
That's fine, thank you, sir. Can I just clarify? So when you retire and make your decision, we should all leave and we'll get notified afterwards, not on the day.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
And Sergeant Gosling and Louise Busfield.
Fine, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Please may I remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they have already given in writing, but to expand on their written representations. All questions are to be asked through the chair, and there will be no cross-examination of parties. I will now ask the licensing officer to present the report. Sarah, please.
Thank you. An application has been made to vary the current premises licence to extend the terminal hour on Fridays, Saturdays, bank and public holidays by 50 minutes to terminate at 2:50 a.m. on those days. This is only requested for the supply of alcohol and the provision of late night refreshment. An additional 30 minutes is requested for the provision of recorded music until 2:30 a.m. The opening hours are also sought to be amended to reflect the new permitted hours should they be granted. In addition, the applicant wishes to amend condition 2.2 to reflect new security provisions and remove condition 2.5, which restricts customer admittance after 1:30 a.m. should this application be granted. Finally, an up-to-date layout plan showing both 147 and 149 Commercial Road has also been submitted for approval. Conditions have been agreed with Environmental Health, which will only be applied to the licence should the application be granted or part of it. One representation was received from Dorset Police on the grounds that to grant the application would undermine the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety and the prevention of public nuisance. No representations were received from any of the other responsible authorities or any other person. Should this application be granted and the applicants fail to operate in accordance with their licence or any conditions attached to it, they will be aware that any of the responsible authorities or any other person may request a review of the licence at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions for the officer at all?
Nothing, Chair.
Okay. Right. For the applicant, Mr. Walgrave, do you have any questions for the officer at all?
Just one through you, Chair. On the executive summary bullet point 4 with the opening hours, I think you've put there 02:30, but it's right that that should be 0300 because the opening hours are already 02:30. Thank you.
Thank you. Sergeant Gosling, do you have any questions for the officer at all at this point?
Mine was similar clarification, but thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Regarding the application.
Thank you, sir. In my respectful submission, granting this application will have no negative impact on the licensing objectives, given the existing conditions which are on the premises licence and also proposed conditions which have been agreed with Environmental Health and some others which I'll come on to. Also taking into account the track record of the premises, the nature and character of it and certain matters set out in this council's own licensing policy and section 182 guidance issued by the Secretary of State. My presentation really sort of falls into 4 separate sections. The first, I'm just going to run through slight changes to the application in terms of conditions that are being sought. The second part, then talk to you about the nature and character of the premises, its trading history, track record, etc. Third, to go on to make some comments about the representation that has been made by the police. And then lastly, to draw your attention to those specific parts of your policy and the section 182 guidance, which I think are relevant and which I'll be asking you to have special regard to when you retire. So just dealing with the effective amendments to the application, as you've just heard in the report, the application is to extend licensable activities on Fridays and Saturdays and bank holidays. And you've heard the amendment to that report. It should be 3 o'clock for the closing out of the premises on those days. Initially, the condition was in relation to 2.2 to add an additional SIA on those Friday, Saturdays and bank holidays. And I think the current condition is from that additional SIA person to be from 11:30 p.m. But we wish to revise that so that the third would commence from 11 p.m. rather than 11:30, so half an hour earlier than the condition currently states. Also, we're not seeking to remove condition 2.5 with the last entry time, but we are inviting you, rather than to consider removing it, to revise it so that the last entry time to the premises would be 2 a.m. On those days, and we'll explain the reasons why in due course. So the reality of this application is that these premises, if you grant the application, will be open for 30 more minutes on a Friday, Saturday and those bank holiday days, which effectively would be a maximum of 7 days each year on top of the Fridays and Saturdays. A bit of information about Dolce Vita and Drift. The premises has been owned by Mr. De Paolo and his family since 2014. So Dolce Vita opened as an Italian fine dining restaurant and has been trading for over a decade. But they are experienced licensed operators and the family have had licensed premises in the local area since 1993, both in Poole and another premises in Weymouth. In 2019, they acquired the premises next door to Dolce Vita and opened it as Drift. So it is in effect one premises, so there is access between the two, and it's Dolce Vita, the fine dining Italian restaurant, and Drift, which is essentially, for want of a better description, a cocktail bar where diners can have pre and post dinner drinks, and also people can just come in to Drift if they want to spend an evening with friends having cocktails. You heard from your licensing officer that a plan has been submitted. My instructions from Leslie were that this plan has already been approved previously by Poole Council, but the record has been lost since the transfer over from Poole to BCP Council. So it's not the case that Drift is unlicensed and we're asking you to license it today. It is already licensed and that plan has already been approved. It's just the plan on the current license actually is the outdated plan. So we're not asking you to approve it. It's simply to update it with the correct information. So that actually isn't part of the application. You don't need to consider whether you should be licensing the Drift side of the premises or not. It is already licensed and has been trading for some years now. As I've said, there is access between the two premises, which allows the customers to use both Drift and Dolce Vita on a Friday and Saturday evening. And the reason for opening Drift really was to ensure that the business could be sustainable, because I'm sure you're aware that the hospitality business has faced some severe challenges in recent times, particularly with COVID, and is taking some considerable time to recover. And to back that up, a report was recently issued by global tax firm Ryan, which was only published last month, which reported that 2,283 licensed premises in the UK had closed within the last 5 years. There are more licensed premises closing than are opening. And Mr. De Paolo and his family decided to effectively diversify the business because they could see that trading Dolce Vita simply as a restaurant may not be sustainable. And so, as I say, diversify the business by opening up Drift as a cocktail bar to ensure the continued success of this business. The family's invested substantial sums into the development of those premises, which naturally provides local employment. And it does bring a vibrant and much loved restaurant into this local community, which is sustainable for the future. Obviously, the application before you is to extend the licensing hours. And as with any application to change a license, it has commercial reasons behind it. And those are that the habits of people have changed considerably since COVID, and Mr. De Paolo's customer base is essentially drawn from the local community, and he has seen a change in those habits where people now come out later in the evening, but also he loses quite a number of customers in the later evening between sort of 12 and 1:30, where customers are then going into Bournemouth because there are licensed premises which are open up later. He's had lots of conversations with his customers, which he tells me is a loyal customer base, has a good number of regular customers there, and they have been pushing him to apply for a variation because they don't want to go into Bournemouth. They would rather stay put in one place, enjoy their entire evening there, and then go home. And so that essentially is why he's put the application forward. It's because there has been a dip in trade post COVID. He has done all he can, obviously, to continue promoting his restaurant and bar and to keep the service at an incredibly high standard to ensure the pricing is right, but still has this, pardon the pun, drift away from the premises because people want to extend the evening of their enjoyment, and they do then come into Bournemouth. So it's to keep people in one place, to stop that transient customers into Bournemouth. My respectful submission is extending the hours for the sale of alcohol and allowing people on the premises for half an hour on a Friday and Saturday. It does not inevitably mean that people are going to be drinking more and that the people at these premises are going to be more heavily intoxicated than would otherwise be the case. Extending hours does not, as the police might suggest, automatically mean more drinking and more crime and disorder as a result. As I've said, this is to try and keep people in one place. Those people who are leaving are going to other licensed premises in Bournemouth and staying there into the early hours of the morning. We say this application actually has a beneficial impact on the licensing objectives in that it is then able to keep the customers here in Ashley Cross, in these premises, a safe environment, one which the customers really enjoy. They want to stay there. They've expressed their views that they wouldn't then get taxis into Bournemouth. And not only that, it means that the other premises which are currently closing at 2 a.m, there would be an effective lighter dispersal of people at that time, because people from this premises wouldn't then be leaving for another half an hour, and so much less pressure on the taxi rank which is nearby, and also the fast food establishment. Just in relation to section 182 of the guidance, as I say, I'm going to come on to the end of my submission and talk about this in detail, but it's right at this stage to just draw your attention to paragraph 1.5 of the guidance to put what I'm saying now into context. So I'll just read to you what paragraph 1.5 says. So it talks about the legislation's key aims and sets out in a number of bullet points what those key aims are. One of which is to recognise the important role which pubs and other licensed premises play in our local communities by minimising the regulatory burden on businesses, encouraging innovation and supporting responsible premises. And that, in essence, is what we're asking you to do, to support and encourage the innovation of Mr. De Paolo and to support the responsible operator in just allowing his customers to stay there for an extra half an hour. Paragraph 14.52 of that guidance, and forgive me for having to flick through the pages. Concerns itself with licensing hours, and indeed your own BCP policy at paragraph 10.2 also recognises the importance of licensed premises within the local communities. And 14.52 of the guidance says statements of licensing policy should set out the licensing authority's approach regarding licensed opening hours and the strategy it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives in its area. And when I come on to talk about your policy and the guidance in detail in due course, I'll draw your attention to the fact that the Bournemouth City Council policy is not to have sort of fixed closing hours, which is effectively what the police want you to do. That's what they're asking you to do. One of the fears they have, as set out in their statement, is that if you grant this application, then others may come and apply for later hours as well. So they want to keep the hours in agricultural costs fixed for the licensed premises at 2 a.m. As I say, I'll come on to that in a bit more detail in due course. But I'm asking you to look at your own policy. It should be the licensing authority that dictate the policy around what licensing hours are appropriate. It shouldn't be for the police to set that policy by the way in which they present their case to you. And certainly it's not the case that you should have in your minds what other premises may do after your determination today. Those matters are entirely irrelevant. So Dolce Vita and Drift is popular with a wide variety of the local community. So it's used by families, couples, groups of friends. Dolce Vita is obviously a place where people can celebrate special occasions, birthdays, retirements, wedding anniversaries, those sorts of things. It has a more mature age customer group, and in fact Mr. De Paolo voluntarily has a 25 and over policy on Friday and Saturday evenings. So he doesn't want a younger crowd in the venue because he doesn't want to detract from the safe environment that he's providing currently and which his customers enjoy. We haven't offered that as a condition. It is something you could consider as imposing a condition if you thought it was necessary. But we say it's not necessary. It should be something which he should be allowed to do, impose effectively his own rule on who's allowed in and out of the venue to ensure that it continues with its good track record of trading. Drift, as I said, complements Dolce Vita with a warm, friendly and safe environment. And it is, we would say, very different from the other bars in the local area, and particularly the other two places which open at 2 a.m, which is Camden and Moray. So as I've said, it's predominantly a cocktail bar, but it has a more mature customer base. So the family have been there for 11 years at Dolce Vita, 5 years at Drift. They know the local area very well. They know their customers extremely well. They know other local businesses. They know how this area works. I think one of the fears expressed by the police is that customers from the other 2 a.m. venues may come here just for a last drink. And specifically to address that, that's why I advised Mr. De Paolo to offer the condition that a last entry time should remain. So if you impose a condition that that last entry be 2 a.m, then you won't have the people from those two premises coming to this premises for what's considered to be the last drink. We say the last entry time, yes, that shows quite clearly that would be enforced. But we say those customers from those venues wouldn't come to us in any event. It's a different vibe. It's not their sort of venue. They have their particular loyal customer base. We have ours. We wouldn't have that transient of those two bars, all of their customers leaving and coming to us, particularly as I've said a number of times, we're only talking about an additional 30 minutes on a Friday and Saturday and bank holidays. It's not a substantial change from what they're currently doing. So just talking about the track record of Dolce Vita and Drift, Mr. De Paolo is a responsible operator and has a very good trading record at both premises. He's had no issues raised by responsible authorities in the management of those premises over those years. He's had temporary event notices, certainly I'm aware, over the last 2 years on every bank holiday weekend to extend the hours until 3 a.m. on Fridays, Saturdays, some Thursdays of those bank holidays also extending the hours on the Sunday of the bank holidays to 2 a.m. So that's over all of the bank holidays over the last 2 years, and had the 3 o'clock temporary event notices over this weekend. And again, there haven't been concerns raised over the use of those additional hours on those 20 plus occasions where he's already operated to 3 a.m. So that has dealt with the conditions we're proposing to put forward. There was one other condition that is new, and I don't believe we have yet communicated that to the police, but that is for the SIA to wear body-worn video cameras as well, to act again as a significant deterrent to minimise what we say is a very minimal risk of a likelihood of increase in crime and disorder. But we say, well, with that condition, we think that the risk would be eliminated yet further. I know the police in their statement have suggested that there aren't any possible conditions that could minimise that risk or promote the licensing objectives, but I wholeheartedly disagree with that. The use of body-worn video cameras is a request I see frequently by police forces up and down the UK. It is acknowledged as a significant deterrent and a significant plus tick box to promote the licensing objectives. And I would be surprised to hear the police say that offering that condition would have no impact whatsoever, but we'll wait to hear what they say on that. So that's an additional condition to offer. So just coming on specifically to what the police say, and there are a number of things which I would respectfully submit are questions of fact, really, and not in dispute, but they are matters within your discretion. So the three of you will need to discuss whether what I say is correct or what the police are saying is right. So the first point to make is about, well, what will other people do? What will other licensed premises do if you grant this application? The police say you should take into account that other people may apply, and the more people that have got later licenses must mean that there will be a substantial increase risk to crime and disorder. I say to you, it's a fact. That is a completely irrelevant consideration. You cannot consider what other licensed premises may or may not do. If you would have decided in this application today, you can only take into account what trading hours those other premises currently have and what my client has applied for. What other people might do in the future, entirely irrelevant. Your own policy says every case must be dealt with on its own merits. Section 182 guidance reinforces that, every case on its own merits. If you think about what other people might do, you are not considering this case on its individual merits and therefore not following your own policy. The police also say that there's a lack of resource or more limited resource of blue light emergency services. Well, respectfully, that isn't relevant either. You cannot determine an application on whether the police say there is a lack of police resource at this time of night. They have a public duty to protect the public at all hours of the day. And if you grant this application, it is their public duty to be able to resource the nighttime economy. So putting forward an argument that the police lack resource is not a reason that you can take into account and is not a reason why you can refuse this application. In my view, the police have not come forward with any credible evidence, either in the representation or the supporting statement, which supports their contention that granting the variation would lead to an increase in crime and disorder. And that, in my view, is the only reason that you would refuse this application if you were satisfied that you'd heard enough that by granting that extra half an hour, there would be more crime and disorder in Ashley Cross as a result of it. There's nothing, there's a statement of opinion as to what might happen, a fear of what might happen, but there's nothing supporting that view in terms of data, analysis, and indeed the officer who wrote the original representation didn't even know that Drift and Dolce Vita were the same premises. So in my view, that showed a clear lack of local knowledge about this particular venue in any event. I've also mentioned that my comment about the conditions, the police are saying there couldn't possibly be any conditions which would mitigate the likely increase in crime and disorder. Well, I don't see how they can come to that view where an additional SIA operative has been offered. So having an extra SIA doorman, why would that not minimise any potential risk of an increase in crime and disorder? The fear of people coming up to the premises already intoxicated and trying to get the last drink and then be, even more drunk and cause a nuisance. Well, having an extra doorman to ensure that those people do not gain entry. So if people who are already intoxicated come to the premises, they're not getting in. Mr. De Paolo is not running a premises where his aim is simply to serve people alcohol and to take as much money through the till. As I've said to you, sustainability is absolutely vital for this business, and you have to be able to sustain the brand image and the safe environment that's already there for the customers that already use the premises. Because if you get that last drink mentality, if you get that younger crowd coming to the venue, that will lose the mainstay of his business earlier in the evening. So that's just not going to happen. So we say there are conditions which are suitable to alleviate the risk. I've already said to you, we don't believe from our trading there and from all those temporary event notices, we don't believe that there would be any increase in crime disorder whatsoever. But we are willing to offer those conditions just to reassure this licensing subcommittee they can have confidence in granting the application. The police may say to you, well, it's not about controlling the people on the premises whilst they're there. So the addition of the third doorman, yes, may be able to control what's going on inside the premises, but they'll say to you there may be a greater risk of, well, what about when people leave the premises and are away from them outside the vicinity of the premises? Well, that is the responsibility of those individual persons, and paragraph 2.27 of the section 1.8 guidance and 10.1 of your own policy both make it clear that the conduct of people away from licensed premises is the personal responsibility of those people, and that there are other measures which exist to deal with that behaviour. It's not about trying to restrict the enjoyment of the vast majority of people who are in the nighttime economy to combat the odd occasion where a minority of people may cause issues. Your policy acknowledges it, the section 182 guidance acknowledges it. And as I've said to you about the track record of the premises and how it's traded responsibly, paragraph 9.44 of the section 182 guidance makes it clear that when you're considering a variation application, the track record of the premises actually is a very important part for you to consider. Now, what Mr. De Paolo could not possibly promise you is if you granted this variation to extend the hours and so that he can open till 3 o'clock, he can't promise you that there would never be an incident at premises or in the vicinity of the premises, because nobody could do that. Licensed premises from time to time have incidents at them. It's about how those incidents are then managed, how the operators respond to them. As I said, you should not be imposing regulatory burdens on businesses just to deal with those sorts of isolated incidents where you've got confidence that the vast majority of the time those things don't happen, and when they do, that they are managed properly and professionally by those who run the businesses in which you grant them the licenses. Mr. De Paolo knows that his license is a privilege. It's not a right. He knows it's a privilege. He knows that there could be a review of that premises license at any time. He tells me he is always willing to work with the responsible authorities. You've heard that he agreed conditions with the environmental health officer, and he himself said if an issue arose subsequent to the grant of this application where there were genuine and credible concerns that that additional half hour had caused problems, it wouldn't need a review to come back to you to consider whether you should knock those hours back. He would automatically reduce those hours back anyway, because as I said, he's got to protect his business, he's got to protect his brand, and he's got to protect that loyal customer base he already has, because if he loses that frequent returning customer, then his business is going to fail. So it's kind of self-regulating as opposed to the need for saying, no, you must close at 2:30. I know from discussions with Mr. De Paolo that the police have had conversations with other operators locally. They have had conversations previously with Mr. De Paolo, and they do discourage anybody applying for later hours within Ashley Cross. So other operators have thought about extending their hours. Mr. De Paolo has thought about it for a couple of years at least, but he's now making the application because there is a business need to do that, and he is entirely confident that there will be no negative impact on the local community if you grant it that extra 30 minutes. So one final point on the police representation to make is in that additional statement, the officer has said that he has put forward credible evidence. My view is clear. There is no evidence in that statement. It's a statement of opinion which isn't supported by any evidence. So the fact that he says there's credible evidence does not make it so. You have to listen to whether there is any credible evidence to support that, or is it just simply a view that extending this license by effectively a 30-minute closing time is going to lead to higher levels of intoxication and crime and disorder. There isn't anything in the representation or the statement which reaches that conclusion. It just goes straight to the conclusion that that's what's going to happen. It doesn't tell you why. So there's no, in my view, no evidence to support that. So just concluding, and I'm going to run through specifically again relevant paragraphs of the Section 182 guidance and your policy, which you as experienced counsellors know you have to take both into account in equal measure. And if you do not follow either the Section 182 guidance or what's contained in your policy, then in giving your reasons, you would need to explain why you've not followed that particular policy. So just running through these as quickly and as briefly as I can. Paragraph 5.1 of your policy says that your vision is to create vibrant communities with outstanding quality of life. Going on at paragraph 10.12 of your policy and paragraph 14.52, section 182, which I've already referred to, that's licensed premises make an important contribution to local communities. Your policy specifically supports BCP Council's corporate strategy. I've read through that document in detail, and that talks about maximising the opportunity for all as a priority of that strategy. And its clear ambition is to revitalise high streets, create new opportunities, which includes leisure activities. So we say this application sits fairly and squarely with your corporate strategy and thus with your licensing policy. Paragraph 9.44 of the Section 182 guidance. You should consider both the existing conditions on the licence and those which we've proposed on the variation to mitigate any negative impact on the licensing objectives, and you must take into account the track record of the business. So everything I have said is relevant and credible evidence towards the mitigation of potential risk substantiated by the track record of this particular business. remind you again, 2.27 of section 182 and 10.1 of your own policy, the conduct of individuals away from licensed premises is the personal responsibility of those individuals. 10.3 of your policy confirms, and this is in relation to the hours specifically, that paragraph confirms you've not considered the use of alternative measures such as fixed closing times, and that if you intended to orchestrate closing times to manage problems in the nighttime economy, you would undertake a review and justify the reasons for doing so. So your policy is very clear. You don't fix the times. Yet in Ashley Cross, we have a situation where you have 3 venues at 2 o'clock, all being told by the police, don't apply for a variation. We're opposed to it. You should allow this business the opportunity. Forget the other 2. You don't need to consider them today. You should allow this business the opportunity to flourish, provide that vibrant community, and notably not a single resident has made a representation against this application. So the police talk about in their additional statement how the local community might be affected. There's families living nearby. Well, a lot of the local community are using these premises. Not one of them has had an adverse thing to say about this application. And I think that's quite telling and an important consideration for you. Paragraph 9.43 of the section 182 guidance makes it clear, and I know you're already aware, I'm just running through to make sure these points are fresh in your memory, but it requires your determination to be evidence-based and justified as being appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives and proportionate. I say the fact that 2 years of temporary events till 3 o'clock over all those bank holiday weekends with that good track record should give you the confidence and the credible evidence that this premises can operate till 3 o'clock on Friday and Saturday without adding any crime and disorder locally. And the last point on the policy and the last point in my submission is about the power of review of the licence, which I have mentioned. So paragraph 11.1 of the section 182 guidance makes it clear that the review process of a licence is a key protection for local communities. In the original guidance, which was issued under the Act, it said that that would allow competitors to apply a light touch to applications to be able to promote businesses and to allow responsible operators to operate their businesses as they see fit. That is still a very important consideration, that there is always that process of review. So it's not a question of this committee granting the application and seeing the premises opening up till 3 a.m. on Friday and Saturday, and that being the situation forevermore. Mr. De Paolo has said if problems arise in discussions with the police, he would voluntarily cut the hours back to address those issues. He's entirely confident they won't happen, but ultimately the police or any other responsible authority or local resident can bring it straight back to you in a short period of time, matter of 6 to 8 weeks tops, for you to reconsider the matter when you may have then credible evidence of what's been happening locally, which you don't have today. So I apologise that's taken so long, but this application is so vitally important to my client, and he wanted me to try and express the passion which he has both for his businesses and being part of this local community, and the real need that the sustainability of this business has to just have that extra half an hour, which is not going to have any negative impact on the local community. So we invite you to grant the application with the additional conditions that have been proposed, but bearing in mind that your discretion would allow you to consider, if you thought there might be issues with what we've applied for, it's not a question of grant or refuse, there is a middle ground. So you can consider any extension of the hours where you were satisfied that there wasn't any likely negative impact on the crime and disorder objective. So, for example, I had a chat with Mr. De Paolo about his application that was put in was for the sale of alcohol until 2:50, which effectively only allows a 10-minute drinking up period until 3. you might consider that a 20-minute drinking up period, which was what was always under the 64 Act for whatever, 50 years, you might think it's actually more appropriate to have a 20-minute drinking up period rather than 10. You have that discretion to do that. So please, when you retire, do consider all options, not just whether you give us what we've asked for or you refuse it. There is that middle ground to address concerns if you feel there are any, which, as I said, in my view, but we're happy to answer any questions. And
Okay.
I do thank you for the time you've allowed me to speak on the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Walsgrove. Members, do you have any questions for Mr. Walsgrove or the applicant at all?
Yes, I think I do.
Councillor Richardson.
Yes, I'm thinking the business rationale here, the customer demographic you describe doesn't seem to fit with people who want to sit up very late in the evening. So could you tell us a bit more about who the customers are of the two venues?
At the moment,
Yeah, if you want to deal with that specifically, and then I'll add a comment.
you can do it.
Yes, you describe.
Basically, at the moment, we have a customer from 24 up until 45, 50, 55. What kind of families? No, it's friends, brother, sister, mostly like this. But we cannot allow young people under 22, 23, because all the time they come for one beer, they cause problem. We don't wanna. At the moment, we have this age from 24, 25 up.
I think just to add to that, the higher age groups still do enjoy a night out later into the evening. I'd certainly put myself in that category. Just from my own personal experience, I go out to licensed premises till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to enjoy myself. Yeah, I know you might find that surprising, but there are a significant number of people that will enjoy a night out. Friday and Saturday nights are obviously, it always have been, the 2 nights of the week where people, that's when they have their leisure time, that's when they go out and enjoy themselves. And if you're going out, and particularly with that kind of age group, my age group, you're not going out every week. You might go out every 2 or 3 weeks, but when you do go out, you want to go out and enjoy the whole evening, and you do stay out into the early hours of the morning. So if you look into the nighttime economy, not just in Ashley Cross, but in Bournemouth and any other town centres, it's not just a young crowd of 18 to 25-year-olds who are enjoying the nighttime economy.
I think the question was directed at this premises, not Bournemouth. Yeah, so
Can I say something? Basically, I cannot allow young people 20, 22, but this is from 11 o'clock in the evening through the night time. Before, they are more than welcome to have drinks and spend the time in the restaurant as well, you know, but from 11 o'clock is a really, really strange time for this kind of age of people, for my experience in nighttime. And from 11 o'clock, 11:30 in the night, I cannot allow this kind of age.
thank you for that. You happy with that response,
Just
Councillor
one more
Richardson?
then. Are the customers usually the restaurant customers as well, or?
No, I mean, there are people going to Drift just to have a drink. There is a food menu in Drift as well, a tapas menu. And to be perfectly honest, if someone wanted to order off the Dolce Vita menu, they could. But essentially, no, that is more of a cocktail bar. So the restaurant guests certainly do use it, but there will be numbers of people who are just going out for a drink and not eating.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a
Thank
few,
you, sir.
I'm afraid. The restaurant, what time do you stop serving food? What time do people stop booking tables, and when does it become just a bar?
Yeah, so generally the food service has concluded at 10:30.
If you don't think that people are going to leave the other venues and come to this venue, why do you want to move the last entry time back to 2 o'clock? Because it would seem to me that 30 minutes is irrelevant if what you're saying is the case.
That would be a matter for you if you thought the current time to stop people coming was appropriate. You could impose that as a condition. We feel there doesn't need to be a last entry time at all. That customers should be given the freedom of choice and come as they wish who use these premises, because if they, people may have, for example, done the opposite, been out in Bournemouth and then come back, returned home to the Ashley Cross area and might want a nightcap, a last drink there. We're saying, well, we would stop the transient from the two other late night venues, but would like the opportunity to determine for ourselves who can and can't come into the venue. But if you think that is a condition which would give you the confidence that you're not going to have the issues, then so be it. That's what they would have to abide by. They'd have to stick to that last entry time.
All right, thank you. My last question, apologies if I should know this, if it's in the paper somewhere and I've missed it. There doesn't look like there's any drinking up time under the current licence.
Yes, so the sale of alcohol currently is until 2 and they close at 2:30, so there's half an hour.
The close, yes, of course, there's the close at 2:30. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're right,
so we're asking it to go to 2:50.
Yeah.
Close at 3. But as I've said, and the conversation I had with Mr. De Paolo is, generally 20 minutes is the acceptable time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. You mentioned that the company's been operating on 10s. Are you able to give me an idea of how many 10s that you applied for and were granted at all? Don't know whether Sarah might be able to help with that one as well.
So I can run through for the last 2 years. So in 2024, they had temporary event notices on the 28th of March to the 1st of April, which was the... Okay, so 3... 13 in 2024 till 3 o'clock. And 13 so far this year.
Thanks for that. Can I ask, out of those 26 events, how many SIA doormen, how many SIA door people, door persons, did the applicant have on at that time?
Yeah, you had 3.
3 doormen, yeah.
So 3, as it would be on the proposed condition.
Okay, thank you for that. And can you also confirm whether there was any incidents at any of those events at all which were logged?
I say, remember, never had an accident.
Okay, thanks for that.
I think so.
And finally, mine was one for clarity, really. The application in front of us, Sarah, is marked out with the licensable area covering both venues. And that's in the location plan and in the extended plan showing the layout of the premises. Are we to assume that the application that we were looking at covers both of these premises, and at the end of the day, the drift licence will be superseded.
No, as Mr. Walgrove explained, when it came over from Poole, we didn't have the plan. The plan that was supplied when they did change to both, when they acquired the next door premises and they became one, Poole didn't have a plan attached, and the old plan was attached, but the records show that the premises were operating as one premises. So this is an opportunity to give us an approved filed plan.
Might I just add, there is one premises licence,
Okay.
which covers the whole site.
Yeah.
The address on the premises licence, because of technical issues, can only have the one name, which makes it a bit more confusing. But it's one licence for the whole thing.
It's just a little confusing for me that when you have access from one premises into the other, I would have thought that one licence would supersede the other, but you've explained that there is only one licence, so technically we could have ignored that drift situation, couldn't we? Okay, that was it from me. Sergeant, did you have any questions for the applicant at all?
Yeah, we've had a lot of new information that we weren't aware of before as to what the applicant would be relying on today, so you'll have to pardon. It might be a bit disjointed, but one of the issues that was raised there by the applicant was around permitted use of the premises by younger customers prior to 11 o'clock. How is that therefore either discouraged or those customers are rejected at 11 o'clock when, according to the applicant, things change within the premises itself?
Mr. Walgrove?
In terms of the age, you mean switching over so that it's to 25?
So the applicant stated that there was permitted use of the premises by younger people, maybe 21, 22, up until 11 o'clock, but that they wouldn't be permitted use of the premises beyond 11. I'm curious as to how that is delivered.
Yeah, so the staff and the SIA then encourage those people, the younger people, to ensure they've drunk up and left the premises by that time, which is why I said that's why we're not offering it as a condition, because it you know, if you set a specific time by which only 25-year-olds are allowed in the premises, you know, encouraging someone to leave the premises, finish their drink and go, you're more likely to breach that condition by 1 or 2 minutes if people are finishing their drinks. It's much better in the control of the staff, the management and the SIA to just be able to say to people, you know, you need to finish your drinks by 11 o'clock, allow them to finish their drinks and then leave, and then obviously not then let any younger people in from that point.
Thank you for that. Any further questions, Sergeant?
No, not this time, Chair.
Thank you very much. No further questions, members, at all?
No, thank
you. No. In which case then, can I ask Sergeant Gosling to address the committee, please?
Yes, Chair, I'll try and keep it brief, and you'll note that, and again, apologies for the late submission of our paperwork. Unfortunately, due to absence and technical issues, it was unavoidable. But on that, I'm not sure that we have had any submission from the applicant in the form of everything that's been discussed about today. So I've tried to make as many notes as I can in relation to the points being relied upon, but hopefully you'll appreciate that there will be certain areas that we're unable to verify, such as any increase in demand around the period of the temporary event notices, and particularly in relation to the use and enjoyment by other customers or residents, and that's certainly something that we wouldn't be able to now have the opportunity to look into. It is without doubt that the licence industry is under pressure. We are seeing increasingly a lot of diversification, with anything from cafes opening slightly later perhaps to Premises that might not engage in any licensable activity at all, perhaps venturing into some prosecco with their cream tea and that sort of thing. So we are seeing that diversification. That's important, and we encourage that. And all the conversations that we have with licensed premises, either existing or proposed, we try and be as supportive as we can. However, there are limitations to that, particularly where we can foresee that there will be a significant risk of problems occurring as a result of whatever it is that's being proposed. Premises opening later will always make us nervous. It is a time that, particularly in areas that I would consider to be more sensitive. So areas, for example, such as Ashley Cross, where whilst we do have a vibrant nighttime economy, you've heard from the applicant that generally speaking, the licensed premises in that area do consider their responsibilities to their neighbours, of which many of them are customers of theirs as well. And striking that balance between ensuring that customer demand is met, of course, that's important. We know that the Licensing Act is deliberately permissive and intended to promote licensable activity for the benefit of the communities. But there is a tipping point, and that tipping point is the reason why we're here today. 2 o'clock is a very much an agreed time scale, and I do take some issue with what was said earlier in respect of what we propose is to standardise or provide fixed hours, which would be contrary to the guidance. And you'll note that, and I will read it because it's only 4 lines. I've made the point in our submission of saying that whilst each application must be assessed on their own merit, and highlighting also that there is no cumulative impact area, it is for you to consider the likely impact that this variation would have in extending the hours, because it is important for you to recognise that essentially this will likely lead to other premises doing exactly the same. Now, that's not for you to consider the others, but it's important to highlight that that will, if you like, open that door slightly for other premises to do that. Mr. Walsgrove is correct in that that's not for you to consider right now. Okay, that's fine, but it will lead to that. Some customers do want to stay out later, and we, as Mr. Walsgrove has described, and it's good that the applicant understands that the wider area, including Bournemouth Town Centre, does have extended hours, but it doesn't have the density of residential properties that Ashley Cross has. It's a different area. Bournemouth Town Centre is in nowhere near as sensitive as Ashley Cross, and that's why those hours are permitted. But even still, the number of those premises is really limited that go sort of beyond or into that 3 o'clock period. The majority of premises do close beforehand. We do resource our nighttime economies as best as we can, and I think our commitment is highlighted by the fact that we deliver several operations aimed at tackling certain threats that we identified within our nighttime economy. Extending these hours would inevitably undermine those efforts. We've talked about the the last entry. That conditioned, and that really, for me, conflicts with other things that were being said by the applicant in respect of, we were told right at the start that this application is born from feedback from existing customers. Then I would argue, why would you then need to attract more customers beyond that 130 that you currently do? That will inevitably result in more people coming into the area, more disturbance in the town, in the outside area, outside the premises. It is our responsibility to manage that. However, I'm very grateful that the vast majority of licensed premises throughout Dorset take the approach that whilst it is our responsibility, licensed premises take the approach of being responsible for the areas that are in the vicinity of their premises. They understand that they do not wish to have a negative impact. And I think the submission that what happens outside becomes our problem is unhelpful at the very least. And I think if everybody took that approach in Bournemouth Town Centre, our levels of crime and disorder would be very different to what they are now. And I'm grateful that the vast majority don't take that approach. So extending the, coming back to that point of the 130 condition, if you were to grant this extension, and I'm not saying that you should, that condition shouldn't need to be changed around the last entry, because it is, you've heard yourselves, this is based upon a request from existing customers to be able to stay longer so that they don't have to go into Bournemouth. On the issue of the, and I will draw it to a conclusion fairly swiftly, but on the issue of the reduced, I'm sure you've noticed that we've been able to sell alcohol until 2:50, and then for the premises to be closed at 3. There is a likelihood that people will have alcohol with them, but you will note from the licence that there is an on and off sales provision. So essentially those people can be provided, have their alcohol poured into plastic vessels if it's not already in plastic vessels, and they can leave with their alcohol. And I think we all understand, and the experience of yourselves as members understand that that will likely lead to people gathering in the green opposite and increased litter, etc., which does get reported to us then as antisocial behaviour. I don't really have a great deal else to say. I think I've made my main points. Again, I've had a lot of new information there in respect of different areas of the guidance. I would ask you just to consider that it is your responsibility to support responsible premises. And whilst I'm not saying that this premises isn't responsible, there are certain other inaccuracies with regards to things like no crime and disorder that was made by, you know, a comment made by Mr. Woolsgrove, which we have to, it's not relevant to this particular matter, but these premises are not without any issues whatsoever. And so by extending the hours beyond, encouraging others to do the same will certainly change the look and feel of this area of Poole. Anything else? And there has been mention as well around the opportunities for ourselves as responsible authorities and neighbouring premises to bring this matter before yourselves for review if required. And whilst it isn't for us to be proactive in that, we have a key role as responsible authorities to use our experience and expertise to try and guide you as to what is likely to increase those levels of crime and disorder and undermine the licensing objectives. And I can assure you, as somebody with a lot of years of experience as a police officer working in our town centres, that extending the hours is likely to increase the levels of crime and disorder in the Ashley Cross area.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Thank you.
Members, any questions for Sergeant Gosling at all?
One little one.
Councillor Richardson.
In Ashley Cross in particular, what's the existing type of bad behaviour that goes on? Is there anything specific that it's well known for?
No, I think that's a really yeah, it's a really important question to ask, isn't it? It's very difficult for us to list that within our submission because we have to remain focused on the impact of this particular premises. As with all nighttime economy areas around Dorset, there are increased levels of alcohol-related crime in particular. So it can be anything from general misdemeanour of maybe larking around that's upsetting neighbours, but then through to outbreaks of violence that can result in injury. These things aren't uncommon in all of our nighttime economies, but we are working very, very hard with partners to reduce that. And wherever we can identify that that is starting to happen or it's associated with a particular licensed premises, then we will work hard to address that. It may well be that we voluntarily ask people to apply conditions to their license, which we've done before, and we have a number of those particular matters going on right now, not particularly in Ashley Cross, but within other nighttime economy areas. But I think the key thing with Ashley Cross, and we see it certainly with some of the events that take place, and particularly during the summer months when it's a bit busier and people are more likely to stay out longer, that we do see reports of antisocial behaviour, and more often than not, it's alcohol related.
Thank you, Sergeant. Councillor Sidwell.
I'd just like to dig into that a little bit more because you haven't brought any cases specifically. So is there a feeling that you're saying that those incidents of antisocial behaviour are happening purely late at night after people have been drinking? I mean, I know there's issues around other events like Cruise on the Green and things like that, but is it massively different between midnight and 3 a.m? And is that down to the fact that there are these three premises? But if there are no specific cases, that's the bit I'm probably struggling with a little bit.
It's very difficult when you're responding to an application to vary a premises. You're trying to, you can't evidence what we can't prove, if that makes sense. Yeah. In so much as you've heard, the majority of all premises are closing at around that 2 o'clock time. So to give you an idea then of how we link or evidence for 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock, because that's really what we're talking about today, I try and keep any submission as focused as possible on what it is that's being applied for. So I could conceivably have given you some evidence of 12 till 2 o'clock, but that doesn't reflect what's being applied for, and it would be appropriate for Mr. Woolsgrove to say, well, actually, that's not relevant because what we're applying for is that 2 till 3 o'clock. So I'm not sure I can answer your question because we don't have that data because currently there are no licensed premises that are regularly opening between 2 and 3 o'clock. Had I been aware that there was going to be reliance today on the 10s that have been applied for, then I could have perhaps looked into that a bit more. But we are where we are.
Okay, I understand that. Appreciate that. It's based on experience that you guys have. Is there a benefit to spreading out people leaving premises? So, for example, if everybody leaves the premises currently at around 2 o'clock, is that more of a flashpoint than if you spread them out and they leave at different times?
We've found it. I mean, we've got other areas that are fairly comparable to Ashley Cross, and I won't name them because it's not fair. But there are areas that are very similar, both in the sort of makeup of the area with regards to density of residents and the number of premises as well. What you will generally find is that whilst the community will work together, and it's really good to see them working together with regards to things like pub watch, etc., to manage difficult customers, there will not be, it won't be long until, should this application be granted, it won't be long until the other premises say, actually, I'll be doing the same because I can't have customers leaving my premises earlier in the evening because actually they can stay there later. Does that make sense? Yeah. You know, if you've got a last entry at 1:30 or 2 or whenever, they will make sure they leave that neighbouring premises to go to the other premises to stay out longer. So that would be really good for that premises. It doesn't effectively change the dispersal because you're just moving people around that area. So you'll have more people leaving that particular premises at 3 o'clock, but it's essentially the people that would have left the other places at 2 o'clock because they moved in there. So it will lead to Ashley Cross being a 3 a.m. Location in the not too distant future.
Thank you, Sergeant. I had a couple of questions. One you've just answered, to be honest. Staggered times for leaving the premises.
And I think it's a really, because it is important we look at tactics like that. Certainly from a policing perspective, we notice if you look at larger places in particular, larger areas like Bournemouth Town Centre, we can make sure that we have got police resources, as Mr. Walsgrove has highlighted is our responsibility. We can make sure that we have police resources in the right areas of town at the right times. So that does happen. But there are, thankfully, when you've got a lot of, the density of Bournemouth with regards to nighttime economy, there is a lot of competition, but also an awful lot of people that come in because it's got the infrastructure, it's got the trains, not too dissimilar to Ashley Cross in that it's got a train station, it's got buses, but it's probably a bit more frequent, and the connections and the hotels, etc. The town centre of Bournemouth is a lot more geared up to. But yeah, there are plenty of premises that are quite happy to enjoy that early trade and say thank you very much, mate. Give that to other people that have to increase their door staff provision, etc., etc. Risk.
Thank you. My final question, did you have any observations or comments with regards to past tens or future tens?
I've not had a chance to look at them, I'm afraid. I conceivably we could have looked at the sort of level of disorder in the area past 2 o'clock, but yeah, haven't had a chance to do that.
Okay, thanks for that. Mr. Walgrove, did you have any questions for Sergeant Gosling at all?
Just on that last point with regard to 10, so the police get a copy of every temporary event notice that they've applied for, don't they? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So the police were aware of that. So my understanding of pretty much every licensing application I've ever done in the UK over the last 20 odd years is that when an application comes before it, the police will check their records against the particular premises that's the subject of the application, and that would obviously highlight to you any issues that would have happened on those occasions that it was open until 3 a.m. So are you saying to the committee you didn't run any checks around issues at the premises over the last year or more?
Sergeant
I'm just
Gosling?
trying to understand how you formed your opinion and also criticism that you weren't made aware of these temporary event notices.
May I answer that one, please? You recall in our fairly lengthy correspondence since Leslie Johnson passed the mediation and the application over to you, that I did state in my communication that we were not going to refer specifically to incidents that had occurred at Dolce Vita Drift. And I haven't included that in our supplementary evidence pack. So we haven't referred to specific incidents because we undertook not to.
Okay, thank you for that, Louise.
I do need to follow up on that because obviously they're putting to you the case that you can't place any reliance on the temporary event notices, and I'm obviously saying you can. So are any of the incidents that you...
As I started with the the meeting. The whole point is questions, not cross-examination. So if you have a clear question for Sergeant Gosling, I'm happy to accept that.
Well, so the question was, had they checked? And now the answer is yes, they did check. So were any of the incidents that you haven't referred to
I wasn't going to refer to any specific.
beyond 2:30 a.m. on those temporary event notices? Because you obviously did do the research. You just said you did.
Could you just bear with me a second? Sarah?
I just wanted to clarify that I just checked our system because obviously environmental health are served copies of TENs. No issues with noise complaints or anything came up from those TENs.
Okay, thank you for that.
Clarify.
So in response to that question, we haven't been advised. So whilst we do get we get informed of lots of things, and one of those things is we get served with a copy of the temporary event notices. Now those temporary event notices aren't subject of today. Now if they were to be relied upon, okay, we wouldn't automatically think that every temporary event notice or the fact that temporary event notices have taken place, we can't expect that all of those things would be relied upon during the hearing. Does that make sense? You know, in the same way as you know, there's been lots of information around the guidance. The guidance we're all familiar with, but again, we're being informed that the applicant intends to rely on that guidance today. Didn't know that they were going to be referring to those particular parts. Now that's okay in relation to the guidance, but we weren't informed that the temporary event notices was going to be the subject of today. We try and be as focused as possible on the application and what's being applied for. That's the feedback that we've had in the past, and that's what we maintain.
Okay, thank you, Sergeant. Did you have any further questions? No. Okay. Right, at this point, I'll just give the objectors and the applicants opportunity to sum up. So if there's anything else that you wish to add, now's the time.
Yes, I will just very briefly sum up with some of the with our sort of clarity around the options that you have. But prior to doing that, I do apologise if it's been slightly disjointed because, as I said, a lot of the information that we've had today is new. So the options that you have available to you, firstly, that you can variation applications applied for, and we've highlighted the concerns that we have with regards to that and the likely outcome that would lead to increased levels of crime and social behaviour in this area in the early hours of the morning. There has been discussion today, both from ourselves and the applicant, around the modification of the conditions. And whilst it's welcome to see that there are increased levels of SIA provision being offered as part of this application, concerns remain around particularly the dispersal of customers from the premises, particularly as there is the opportunity for on and off sales of alcohol. So therefore, effectively, somebody could get a pint of beer or even 2 pints of beer at 10 to 3. Anything they've not drunk, they can consume once they've left. And obviously the change in respect of the last entry, which I think if you were to grant this this variation, we would respectfully seek that the 1:30 time is maintained, and that would simply be to support what has already been said by the applicant in respect of acting on feedback of existing customers and not trying, because the applicant's been clear that they're not trying to get people in for a last drink, and it's inevitable that that sort of thing would happen if you were to extend significantly that last readmission time. And then there is the opportunity for you to refuse the application as a whole. It is very difficult for us to evidence that because we don't know what hasn't happened, if you like. However, we would invite you to consider this option if you share our concerns that this application will likely lead to increased levels of crime and disorder. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergeant. Mr. Walsgrove, would you like to sum up, please?
Beg your pardon. No one goes into licensed premises and comes away with what they haven't drunk in plastic glasses. The suggestion that people at Drift are going to come out of the venue at 3 o'clock with alcohol is, as I say, it just wouldn't happen. Doesn't happen now. They don't leave at 2:30 with their plastic glasses. It's not something that Mr. De Paolo would allow to happen. Even if someone asked him, he wouldn't let them. But if you thought that really was a concern, then you can impose a condition that there be no off sales. And I would suggest, if that were something you want to do, no off sales from 11:30. And I say 11:30 because, as I said, the food service finishes at 10:30 in the restaurant. If someone's finishing their meal, they may have ordered an expensive bottle of wine, not finished it, and may want to take the bottle of wine. We certainly wouldn't let people take alcohol to drink on the streets. That was frankly clutching at straws in my view. You do have to take account of the track record. You do have to take into account the 26 occasions they've opened to 3 with no problems at all. You do have to take into account there's no other objections from responsible authorities. A dispersal policy has been agreed with Environmental Health, who say there isn't going to be any issues of noise nuisance from people leaving half an hour later. As I said, that's all we're talking about, half an hour later. The conditions we've offered are significant. An extra SIA, body-worn video cameras. We've got the last entry condition. You may choose to keep it as it is, 130, as I've said. But overall of that, the police have not adduced any evidence. They've said it will lead to additional crime and disorder, but they haven't told you why, and they haven't produced any evidence to support the why. They've just said it will, and we have evidence that it won't. And so we ask you to grant the application.
Thank you, Mr. Walsgrave. Thanks, Sinead. Right, I will now conclude the hearing. At the end of this meeting, the subcommittee will adjourn in private with the legal advisor and clerk to deliberate. The decision will be conveyed to you in writing as explained earlier, and I would just ask the legal representative just to explain the right of appeal.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there will be a right of appeal to the decision that the subcommittee make today. That appeal needs to be made to Dorset Magistrates Court within 21 days of being formally advised of that decision. We will send the decision out to you by email within 5 working days. Thank you.
Thank you for attendance. Thanks very much.